Hey there, welcome back. So today we're going to talk about one of my favorite tropes in books, and that is a closed circle murder mystery. Basically, one of the characters that we were introduced to in the first couple chapters, we are aware are going to be the murderer, more or less. This is a very straightforward, simple premise. I love that normally it involves like an isolated setting. It's probably one of my favorite tropes just in general. First noticed this, well, obviously not originator, but the most well-known for this is going to be And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. I'm a little bit annoyed with Agatha Christie books right now, so I'm not going to read that anytime soon. But the book that was heavily inspired by that one was One by One, Ruth Ware, I believe. I adored this book. It is a very, very straightforward, simple murder mystery. It's pretty predictable, but it's fast-paced. It's an isolated setting as it's a bunch of tech people. They developed an app. I think they're going public or something like that. And they are on this ski resort for a getaway, and I think meetings and bonding time and corporate stuff. Not important. Someone is murdered. They are getting killed off one by one. Who Dunnit, and what its secrets are going to be revealed. Yeah, there's an avalanche, so they can't get away, and no one can get up to them. It is just a fun, very fast-paced time. I gave it a full 5 stars. Little bit of mixed reviews, because again, pretty predictable. Not a lot of that I remembered big twists and turns. Yeah, not really none that I can really think of. It is just a fun time, fast-paced, atmospheric. The beginning couple chapters I really do describe as like a Hitchcock bomb under the table. You know something's about to happen. You don't know when, you don't know how. You just know it's going to, and you're waiting for it. I really, really enjoyed this book. I think I read this in like one sitting. I remember sitting down to read a couple chapters, and then it's just like, whoopsie, I finished the book. The next book I read with this premise is 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. Both these books I read a couple years ago. But I absolutely adore this book. It is one of my favorites of all time. It is more sci-fi mystery than an actual thriller, but it's so worth it, and I'm putting it on this list because you can't stop me. It is a isolated, closed setting as you're at a party very deep in the woods, can't really get away, and this man is running through the woods. He's got no memory of what's going on, and then he gets there and is told that he needs to solve the death of Evelyn Hardcastle, who is currently still alive, by the way. He is in the past, in a different body, and every time he goes to sleep, he wakes up in a different body, and he has to solve this crime as time resets itself. It's like Groundhog Day, but murder mystery, and the characters are so much fun, and they each have different traits. So when he's in one person's mind, it's different. Like, he has different mental capacities, different physical limitations than when he's in another body. And there's some other things going on, but I really don't want to get too much into it. Because there's a couple reveals there, or, oh, this is what the plot's doing, that I don't want to mess it up. So he really needs to solve this murder because that's the only way you're breaking the time loop. Read this book. I'm giving you no other information. Full 5 stars, with one little notation that I do remember people having with this book. There was a lot of fat phobia depicted around one of the characters, which I understand if that's a turnoff for some people and they just don't want to read it. 100% valid, I understand. All right, the next book is No Exit. This one is really, really beloved. I just don't like characters who make stupid decisions. So 2 stars in my opinion for just the enjoyment, maybe 3, but the ending was really good. I'll get into what this book's about. Pretty straightforward, simple premise. Girl is driving home. She's in a rush to get home because her mother is sick, and she stops at a rest stop because there's a snowstorm coming in. She physically can't get away. They're 100% snowed in. And what happens? Well, just at a rest stop with a random group of characters who also got snowed in. And then she just finds a little girl in the trunk in like a dog cage. So one of these people is a kidnapper, and she's got to figure out how to get the child to safety, how to get help from the police, all while being snowed in and trapped in this situation. She doesn't know what to do or who to trust. And there were just a lot of plot conveniences and weird choices that were made that I wasn't a big fan of, but the ending got really, really brutal, so I appreciate that. But this one, not 100% for me. Love the atmosphere, love the premise. closed circle of characters kind of thing. Yeah, I appreciate this book. The guest list. I'm going to be really quick about this one because I have talked about it on this channel already once before. This book just wasn't for me. I think I can't even remember what I gave it. Was it 3 stars? 2 stars? Probably 2. I don't really remember. The only issue being, this could have been a 5-star book. Easily. Without changing a single word of it, I could have gave this book 5 stars if it was just rearranged a little. You are in an isolated setting. I keep forgetting the place. Is it Ireland? You're on an island. Doesn't really matter. You're there for a wedding, bridesmaids, grooms, and they're all there a little bit early. Someone is killed, and you are flashing back and forth between when they all arrive and just before the body is found. The catch, you are not told until the very end who was killed. And personally, I either need to know who the killer is or who the victim is to enjoy the story. I need to know one of it and solve for the other. I don't want to solve for both because there's just too many red herrings. Well, this person could have killed this one, but this one could have killed this one, and these two both wanted this one dead. I want to know this killer, who did this person have want to kill if I know he's the killer, or if this one's the victim. Okay, well, what are the theories for who wanted him dead? I don't want interchanging everything if I don't have one of the answers. It's just not for me. But the writing was great. The characters were entertaining. I loved this isolated setting so much. So, because I knew I loved this trope, I picked up 2 books this week that had this kind of idea. The first one's a little bit of a cheat. I think it was almost pitched to me as a locked room mystery, which is a different trope altogether, but similar vibes. A locked room mystery is where, obviously, you have a character who's murdered in a locked room. It's locked from the inside. How did the murderer get in? How did the murderer get out? Solve for that. Basically, an impossible location that the body showed up in, or impossible crime, or impossible murder, whatever you want to describe it. This one's a little bit different in the sense that you have a group of characters who all meet in a library after hearing a woman scream. Then later on, after the security has already checked the library, that woman is found murdered. So, where was the body at the time of the murder? What caused her scream? And also, one of the characters that were in the library at the time, we are told is a murderer. So, how did they kill somebody if they were there in the library? So, I close circle in the sense that we know one of these characters is a murderer. Sort of locked room in the sense, how was this person killed? But it's not really the biggest focus of the book, so I'm going to put in the closed circle more than anything. I devoured this book in one sitting. I had the audiobook. I turned it on. I did not turn it off until it was finished because I was so just enamored by the entire situation. There are 2 things that I love about this book. The one being just the characters in general. I was very invested in their relationships and what was happening and how they were going about solving this murder and what was going on in their past. I was very invested in all that. But the main thing I loved about this book is there are just very short little chapters of emails going back and forth between an author and the person, and like the beta reader kind of thing, or someone giving advice on a story. And I was obsessed with these short little interludes about what was going on. Highly, highly, highly recommend. I'm not saying anything else about this book, but it did make me realize one thing about the closed circle, murder mystery, locked door mysteries, whatever, that I have a small issue with, sort of. And that is, if the killer is one of these characters, then it feels too easy. Because it's just like, well, I came up with a logical conclusion for why all these people could be the killer, and if one of those answers is right, it feels too predictable because there were no other options. There was no real twist that could happen, really, because I know one of these has to be the murderer. And you got, like, what, 4 or 5 suspects? Then, okay, I come up with 4 or 5 situations. Eventually they get narrowed down, and yeah, I was right, cool. So that's kind of disappointing. But at the same exact time, I realized if one of these people was not the murderer, then I would feel cheated because I was told one of them was. And even if technically this one is, but really the mastermind was someone else, again, it just feels cheated. So it's almost a no-win situation, yet I have really enjoyed all the books I've talked about so far. They have to have some interesting premise that makes it worth it, even though something is predictable. The last book is called Death in the Family. You ready for a rant? Can I rant? I'm going to rant. I despised every single page of this book. And I don't know how, it's just really a me thing, because look at the Goodreads ratings. Not 5 stars by any means, but it's generally positive. And I will take a moment to acknowledge that writing a book is very hard. Getting one published is insanely difficult. I respect the author so very much for all the hard work that went into this and creating this. I cannot imagine how much time, effort, and how hard it was to write this book, and I'm sure you're very proud of it, and it has found its audience, but its audience is not me. Oh my god. Okay, premise of the book. Lady wakes up after visiting her boyfriend's family, and there's just blood in the bed, and she doesn't know where her boyfriend is, and her family calls the police to investigate this missing person, presumed murder. The entire story is told from a police detective's point of view, first person. Now, let me start with saying, a first-person narrative, I have nothing against. I don't know if it's my if it's my preference between first or third, but I do know if you're going to do something in first person, then the character, because the internal monologue is what you're getting, had better be interesting. It better be well written. It better have some kind of value for what they're thinking, compared to if it would just be third person. This character, this police detective, I hated her internal monologues. I hated everything she paid attention to. I hated everything about being in this character's viewpoint. She is the most, narcissistic is the wrong word, judgmental, rude character whose head I have been in. Now, she has some kind of tragic backstory that is told in the synopsis of the book, so I'm already aware of what happened to her in the past. Yet, the majority of the beginning of the book is just vague hints to this tragic incident in her past. This dark thing that happened to her is very traumatic and bad. Yes, cool. How about you write a story about that part of her life first, rather than telling me what happened in her past in the book jacket of this book, and then making me suffer through little hints of being locked in a basement or kidnapped or something going on, as she should be solving the crime for the current missing person, because it's really dragging down the pacing. I'm not intrigued. You told me on the dust jacket. All right, moving past the issue with the pacing and the fact that the prose and just the writing itself, I just took issue with. I don't know why. If I didn't have the audiobook, I would not have finished this. Okay, why is she so rude? Not really spoilers, but I'm going to give an example. Okay, she goes into the crime scene. The grandmother is grieving. I am genuinely getting invested in this story because the grandmother is so upset and concerned for her grandson being missing. All right, what is the detectives, the lead character who we're supposed to be following through this is going to be a series. What is her response to the grieving grandmother? Well, she's not very comforting, and in her head she's thinking, well, humans are good storytellers, and they want to make a good story, so they're often exaggerate things and be over dramatic. So she's probably exaggerating how good this grandson was. He probably wasn't the precious little snowflake she's thinking of, or she's telling me about. Are you kidding me? That's ridiculous. Another example, these are very wealthy people, so when the grandmother's like, well, he deserves better than this, her thought is immediately just better than gold watches and islands. And I'm like, ma'am, his parents are dead, and he is presumed dead. Why do you think that money is what this grandmother is thinking about right now? Stop it. And she's just so judgmental to all these admittedly very terrible, selfish people, but she goes in with that prejudice, and it's just very, very annoying to me. Now, if you're thinking that I'm just not a fan of someone judging rich people or something, by all means, go ahead. She can judge the rich people all they want. They probably deserve it. Eat the rich. All of that stuff. Fine. Yeah. She is just trigger happy not safe and abusing her power throughout this entire book and is acknowledging it. I will give the author this and I'll give the character this. They are aware that they should not be acting like this. They should not be reaching for their gun in a very safe situation. They should not be lying to the witnesses about what she's allowed to do under the law and acknowledging, I have no legal right to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway because I feel justified and it feels right in this moment. Because what we need in today's society is definitely police overreaching and abusing their power and acting outside the law. That is definitely what we need to do. Heavy spoilers for the last little bit of this book. Jump to this timestamp if you need to. I'm going to say spoilers one more time. In the mid-late part of this book, she takes out her gun and shoots an unarmed sort of suspect, sort of witness. And she assumes that she killed him. She assumes he's dead, so she flees. Turns out he's not dead, but the police officer, that her partner, comes out and flat out says, I will lie for you. I will say it was self-defense. You're not getting in trouble for this. I need your help to continue working this case. What else has she done? She's been hallucinating and stripped off to run half naked through the woods. Yeah, she's definitely in a good mindset to continue working this case. I do not understand any of the choices that were made in this book. I'm only going to assume that throughout the series, she is going to get better and overcome these issues that she is having of being a terrible police officer. I don't know. I'm not going to be reading the rest of the series. This closed circle murder mystery did not work for me. I hated all of the characters. I hated the entire plot. The setting seemed more like a plot device to keep people from coming to help them rather than adding to any kind of atmosphere. Just no. Hard pass on this book. I apologize if that was a little bit too spoiler heavy. I apologize if that was a little bit too much of a rant. Again, I've never written a book. It's very hard. I could be reading things out of context. I got nothing else to say. I don't want to talk about it no more. That's all I got. I'm sorry to end on a downer. I will talk to you later. Bye.